Warning, some viewers may be too lame to enjoy the following information.
Superman Último Escape is probably the most slept-on roller coaster to ever exist. By slept on, I mean that people need to get woke and talk more about this ride. Located at Six Flags Mexico, it is one of the 10 operating Superman-themed roller coasters at Six Flags parks around the world. In fact, as of this year, Six Flags Mexico now has 2 roller coasters named after Superman. We've seen Superman clones all over the place, with Superman Ultimate Flight, the Superman Ride of Steel coasters from Intamin, and now let's take a look at Superman Último Escape, or more accurately pronounced as
Superman el Último Escape.
Superman is a hyper roller coaster built by Morgan in the year 2004. Well, kinda. It was supposed to open in 2002, but the Mexican government said nah, and this pushed back the opening to 2004. Anyways, you may know Morgan for their other hypercoasters, such as Steel Force at Dorney Park, Mamba at Worlds of Fun, or the critically acclaimed Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. Let's take a look and see how this Morgan hypercoaster compares to the rest. And I will gladly answer the question featured in the video title, if Superman is truly the best coaster in Mexico, according to me. At 220 feet tall, Superman can be seen from many parts of Mexico City. Upon entering the parking lot at Six Flags Mexico, the ride is noticeably taller than most of the other attractions as it dominates the left side of the skyline. After walking through the beautiful entrance at Six Flags Mexico, guests will make their way up the hill into the park and will be greeted by the entrance of Superman Último Escape. It is actually one of the first attractions available from the front gate. The entrance building of Superman features a gorgeous facade, with the Superman logo dominating the building. Another cool thing to note is that the roller coasters at Six Flags Mexico feature digital wait time screens to display wait times. I believe this is the only Six Flags park that have this, and if Six Flags can clone Larson loops, then they should clone these. After entering the queue line for Superman, it is immediately obvious that the coaster has more theming than any of the other Six Flags Superman coasters. It turns out that the entrance building is themed to the office Clark Kent works at. Now the theming won't leave you speechless, but I found it to give off similar vibes to the queue line found on The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure or Universal Studios Japan. But just more so on a Six Flags budget, because as soon as you leave the entrance building, you are greeted by a sea of concrete and blue switchbacks. The station building even looks similar to the ones used on the Superman Ultimate Flight coasters, which isn't a bad thing, it just wasn't unique. Now let's get into the actual ride experience that
Superman el Último Escape
has to offer. Most roller coasters don't actually begin until they crest the lift hill and head down the first drop, but that isn't the case with Superman. The ride actually features an amazing pre-lift section which, surprise, even features ejector airtime. Yes, ejector airtime before the lift hill. The ride begins with some cool straight track out the station and then enters the first dip. If you are sitting in the back of the train, then enjoy the ejector airtime down this 10 or 15 foot drop. This drop then sends you into a bunny hill immediately after with even more ejector airtime. Riders then drop down through a swooping right-hand turn and take another pop into a brake run. Now this pop doesn't do much in the back, but you get hella ejector airtime in the front, guaranteed. Now something else to note is that Superman is actually a terrain coaster. The station was at ground level, and if I pause the video here, you will notice the station is much higher up the hill on our right, and we have now dropped all the way down here during the pre-lift section. Riders get to enjoy a few trim breaks and then take the long climb up to the top of the lift hill in typical Morgan fashion. But the views of the city and surrounding mountains from Superman are incredible. Please make sure that when you're riding this coaster, that you take a look around. Mexico City is easily one of the most gorgeous cities ever, and Superman offers one of the best places to look at it. After the 1-minute climb to the top, riders then hit the first drop. Now I found the drop to be basically identical to the first drops on Steel Force at Dorney Park, as well as Mamba at Worlds of Fun, which is a good thing. Thanks to the long trains and shaping on the drop, you get great ejector airtime in the back. Don't expect too much airtime in the front, but overall the drop is really good. The train then hurtles down into a tunnel and rises up into a second hill, which is probably the slowest hill on the ride. You do get some great flow ejector airtime in the front. Flow ejector airtime is essentially very strong, sustained floater airtime. But then this leads into a swooping left-hand drop into the first helix or rolls bowl, whatever you want to call it here. Now get ready for the second surprise offered by Superman. Superman Último Escape features some extremely strong lateral G-forces. You are absolutely pinned to the right side of the train during the entire Rolls Bowl. Even at the top of the helix, you feel as if the train is running way too fast and that there's not nearly enough banking, and it is surprisingly intense. I've been on Steel Force, Mamba, and Phantom's Revenge, and none of these coasters offer strong lateral Gs. This combined with the strong airtime offered on Superman easily makes it the most intense Morgan roller coaster that I have ever ridden, and I'm still not even done with the layout. It gets even better. After the massive Rolls Bowl, the ride shoots up into the strongest moment of airtime on the ride. Riders hit a massive camelback, which offers absolutely insane ejector airtime and then immediately hits a right-hand turn, which is not banked enough either. So you're absolutely tossed out of your seat and then thrown to the left side of the train as you enter the right turn. This is easily my favorite hill on the ride because it f***ing slaps. A cool thing to note is that this hill only really offers airtime during the upward climb, since the drop is a swooping turn. But even in the back cars, you will get ejector airtime during the climb and then get yanked into the turn. And if you sit in the front, well, I nearly thought I was gonna fly out of the train, and it was f***ing awesome. The lap bars on Morgan coasters are pretty tiny, and in my opinion are great for airtime. Anyways, this swooping turn leads into the second helix on the ride, which offers some great crazy lateral Gs. Now I'm talking like wooden coaster level lateral Gs, and it's so cool because typically steel coasters do not have lateral Gs. This is one of the reasons why I usually prefer woodies to steel coasters, but in this regard, Superman really puts up a fight. This leads into a strong airtime pop into the mid-course brake run, which again offers some great ejector airtime. Now before I get into the rest of the ride, let me just make a statement. I'm going to call the previous section of the ride the Spaghetti Bowl of Superman, with the two helixes and several airtime pops mixed in. I'm sure you can think of another coaster themed to Superman that also features a Spaghetti Bowl section, Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England. Now this coaster was built by Intamin, so it's a different manufacturer, but I'm just going to say one thing. The Spaghetti Bowl on Superman Último Escape is what the Spaghetti Bowl on Superman the Ride should have been. Maybe Superman the Ride was better when it ran the original trains prior to 2008, but Superman Último Escape seriously powers through this section. It is intense. Anyways, let's move on to the third major surprise found on Superman Último Escape. Most Morgan coasters with a mid-course brake run typically trim pretty hard. Steel Force does this and so does Mamba. Welp, this isn't the case with Superman. In fact, the mid-course does not slow you down at all. I heard maybe one brake tap the train, but you feel no difference. This absolutely sends you into the post-mid-course section of the ride. The drop off the mid-course features powerful ejector airtime, and it's super cool because you almost don't land back in your seat until the very bottom of the drop. This leads into two massive bunny hills with some massive ejector airtime. The airtime is super sustained as the hills are pretty drawn out, but are taken at a super high rate of speed thanks to the lack of trims on the mid-course. As a result, the bunny hills on Steel Force and Mamba, well, they don't have shit on Superman's bunny hills. Following the second bunny hill, this is where the terrain aspect of the coaster comes back into play. Remember how the station is located on top of a hill and the brake run before the lift hill is at the bottom? Well, after finishing the second bunny hill, the train now needs to climb back up to the station. So the train enters an upward and not banked enough right turn, which features hella lateral Gs. You get a quick pop of airtime at the top and then hit a swooping left-hand turn, which also features laterals. This element takes you back up the hill, and right before the brake run is a little airtime pop, kind of similar to the one on Goliath at Six Flags over Georgia. Then you pretty much slam to a stop since the train is absolutely hauling ass. Now my first ride on Superman Último Escape left me speechless. I was absolutely blown away. I got on the ride expecting a similar experience to Steel Force or Mamba, and ended up riding one of the most intense hypercoasters that I have ever ridden. Up until now, Phantom's Revenge is the only Morgan coaster that has really wowed me, because that ride is amazing. But in my opinion, Superman Último Escape is an even better roller coaster. Between the pre-lift section, sustained ejector airtime, strong lateral Gs, this ride is oddly intense. And I say oddly because it honestly doesn't look intense when you watch the ride, but boy does it deliver. In fact, I rank Superman Último Escape over every single B&M hyper roller coaster that I have ever ridden, and Goliath at Six Flags over Georgia is currently my favorite B&M hypercoaster. And I say hypercoaster because it isn't better than Fury 325, but it still kicks ass. It is better than Leviathan though. Sorry Leviathan. Magnum XL 200 is one of my favorite hypercoasters due to all the intense airtime pops, but let's face it, sustained airtime is better than quick pops. Superman takes the cake over Magnum, and after getting off of Superman for the first time, Magnum was immediately the first coaster I compared it to. In fact, I even ranked the coaster above every single Intamin hypercoaster I've ridden, except for Skyrush. But I only placed Skyrush about 1 or 2 spots above Superman, Maybe I'll release my official top 20 coasters later this year. Wink wink. Now you can probably guess what rating I give Superman, but before I tell you what you already know, let's discuss a few other nerdy things about the ride. For any ride ops or anyone interested in block systems, you might like this. Now if you are unfamiliar with a block system is a computer-regulated safety system that only allows one train to occupy a specific portion of the track at a time. Now it is quite common for coasters that run 3 trains to feature a mid-course brake run. This is because these coasters are typically quite long, and it allows a train to drop off the lift hill before a train completely clears the block on the final brake run, which helps to boost capacity. Now most modern day roller coasters that run 3 trains have enough space on the final brake run to hold at least 2 trains. Well, for some reason, Superman plays it more old school. The final brake run is actually 1 block, so it can only hold 1 train instead of 2. But the ride is capable of running 3 trains, so if you double stack, where does the 3rd train stop? The answer is the mid-course. This is a super old school practice that rides like Gemini at Cedar Point employed back in the day. The idea is that the train should quote unquote never stop moving. Now the ride was not running all 3 trains when I attended the park because one of the trains was undergoing rehab, but I have heard from others that the park does run all 3 trains during peak season. And because of the block setup, the crew pretty much cannot sack a train on the mid-course because the train would absolutely slam to a stop there, and this would completely hinder the second half of the ride since trains would be greatly slowed down. So this basically forces 45-second load times. Now even with just 2 trains, the crew is probably the fastest Six Flags crew I have ever seen, besides when I was a supervisor of El Toro in 2016. So I can definitely see the culture of operations at the ride. The crew was fast as and I would love to see this ride operate with all 3 trains at some point in my life. And the best part of all is that they do this with bins on the platform. Take that, Six Flags and Cedar Fair. Anyways, let's get back to the coaster rating. If you haven't guessed it already, Superman absolutely gets a 10. This coaster sends it. It has a killer pre-lift section, amazing sustained airtime, amazing laterals, amazing everything. The only downside is that the coaster does feel a little short, especially compared to Steel Force or Mamba. But you also have to keep in mind that the ride features a pre-lift section, which is pretty rare, so this helps to make up for it in my opinion. Overall, Superman is easily the best Morgan coaster that I have ever ridden, so I rank the ride above Phantom's Revenge, which was previously my favorite Morgan coaster. This is because Phantom's lacks the lateral G's and sustained airtime found on Superman. The airtime of Phantom's Revenge are more so quick pops of ejector airtime, but I am personally all about the sustained airtime. I have also ridden Steel Dragon 2000 at Nagashima Spa Land, and Superman crushes Steel Dragon. Absolutely crushes it. And please note that I don't consider Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom in the Morgan equation since it was built by Chance Morgan, which in a way is a different company. And to answer the question in the video title, is this the best roller coaster in Mexico? Absolutely. As much as I loved Medusa Steel Coaster, I knew instantly that Superman El Último Escape was one of my favorite roller coasters period. A part of this may be due to the large amount of hype surrounding Medusa Steel Coaster, and honestly, the lack of hype surrounding Superman. But regardless of that, I know I walked off Superman basically saying, what the f***, and I walked off Medusa Steel Coaster like, that wasn't as good as I expected it to be. Superman is more intense and offers more sustained forces, which easily places it above Medusa for me. Now I do give both coasters a 10 out of 10, but if I had to be more specific, Medusa kind of just barely gets a 10, whereas Superman absolutely gets a 10, no questions asked. So this is going to conclude my review of Superman El Último Escape at Six Flags Mexico. I have posted several other videos from my recent trip to Mexico down below. Be sure to check them out, they are all linked in the description. Oh, I also made official ElToroRyan Instagram and Facebook pages. Check them out, link in description. Anyways, thanks for watching guys, peace.